Hello, fellow leaders. I wanted to bring you greetings and welcome to the beginning of the class where we're going to talk about innovation. And I thought it would be a good idea to begin with giving you some thoughts that I've had over the years about innovation. I was a lawyer for about 35 years, and one of the core concepts in law is we've always done it that way. They call it stare decisis. So if a judge is looking at a case and he's being asked to do something, he looks back at old cases and says, well, what did they do in the past? And we should do things the way it has always been done, follow these old principles. Well, that works sometimes, but I thought when I was thinking about this stare decisis concept, if people had followed that to the letter, we would never have achieved school integration, because Brown versus the Board of Education was a monumentally, fundamentally different departure from cases in the past. Separate but equal had been the rule and the law for long time in the United States. And what the Brown versus Board of Education case said was, we're going to do something different. We're going to integrate. We think this separating of the racial communities is not in the best interests of America. And of course, it spawned a lot of conflict and protests and busing and all that. But I think today we look back on the 1954 decision of the Supreme Court, recognizing that was the right thing to do. So here's what I want to ask you to do. I want you to kind of get outside your normal parameters and put your thinking cap on and think about, am I creative? Now, if someone came up and asked you that question, most of us would initially respond, well, a little bit, or maybe we'd say, no, not really. Part of it is because we don't want to sound too braggadocious, but part of it is we've been schooled to not think very creatively. We've been told to look back at precedent. How have we always done things? And that was successful, so we'll do that again. And that's not a good environment for creativity. So innovation and creativity, I'm going to kind of use those terms interchangeably. But I want to talk to you about a book I read a bunch of years ago called A Whack in the Side of the Head. And there's a sequel to it called A Kick in the Seat of the Pants. And this author, Roger Van Auck, was a really interesting guy, and he's got a lot of drawings and cartoons and stuff in these books, which really appealed to me. But the core concept of those books got me thinking, how could I be creative as a lawyer who's steeped in a culture of stare decisis? So I started really with something very small. One of the suggestions in that book was change things up in your office. Now, in the offices that I served in my law firm, it was very businesslike. So everything was at 90-degree angles. Your desk was at a 90-degree angle to the door, and all the chairs were carefully placed, very orderly fashion. So after reading Van Auck's book, I just decided I'm going to tilt my desk. And so I took it from a 90-degree angle to a 45-degree angle. And it was amazing. People would come in and they go, what happened to your office? Oh, well, I moved my desk. You did? Wow. And pretty soon, there's this rumor going through the office. You know that Jim Priest? He's really creative. All I did was move my desk. It wasn't that big a deal. But what Van Auck was asking us to do in his book, mix it up in your office. Don't get stuck in the same routine. Don't get stuck in a rut. So look at new ways, go new places to think through stuff, and just make sure you're breaking out of the routine. Even simple things like how you get to work in the morning. Take a different route, and you'll see something, and maybe it'll spark an idea. I was going a different way home a couple weeks ago, and I saw a marquee at McDonald's that said, apply by texting to this number, apply for employment. And I thought, wow, that's a great idea. Why don't we try that? So I got back to the office and I suggested that to Caitlin and Chrisella. So you'll see things, if you look at the world a different way, you'll see new things. So real quickly, I just want to share a couple of ideas from Von Uck's book. He says there's 4 mental locks that keep us from being creative. And Picasso said, every child is an artist. The problem is how to remain an artist after growing up. So we get creativity and innovation kind of beaten out of us. And I think the key, particularly for us here at Goodwill, is the concept that we talk a lot about is respect and trust. Because you got to feel safe in order to launch seemingly crazy ideas. I forget who it was, but maybe it was somebody like Thomas Edison said, every idea is first a crazy idea before it becomes a valid idea. So here's the 10 mental locks. I'm just going to tick through them really quickly. One is the mindset that says there's only one right answer. So Von Uck says, look for the second right answer. I read something the other day that said 80% of brainstorming sessions are proposals for problem solution, and only 20% are asking questions. So this person was saying, you need to ask questions. Avoid the idea that's not logical. Always follow the rules, another mental lock. Be practical. Here's a good one. Play is frivolous. And Von Uck talks about how the ha-ha moment is directly connected with the aha moment. And sometimes you'll have your best ideas when you're doing something silly like playing with putty. And I've got some thinking putty here in my office. And sometimes just doing something like that can help spur ideas. Avoid the that's not my area. Avoid the idea don't be foolish. To err is wrong. We want to banish that idea. The way to come up with great ideas is to come up with lots of ideas and then throw out the bad ones. Avoid ambiguity. People often tell you that. They want precision, but ambiguity is what leads to innovation and creativity. And then the last one, I kind of touched on earlier. I'm not creative. And some of you may be thinking that. I'm not an innovator. I haven't invented anything. I'm not really good at technology. Don't think that. Each of us is creative. You were creative certainly when you were a child. You were making up stories and friends. And, I had an imaginary friend when I was a kid. You make up plays and games. And we need to kind of get back into that mentality where we're not afraid to take a chance and do something that might be thought odd by other people. And that's again where that trust and respect comes in. We have to trust each other, and I have to be able to trust you that you're not going to make fun of me when I come up with a crazy idea. So that's kind of the quick skinny, about an 8-minute talk on that. Looking forward to working with you through this module, and feel free to email me. We'll also be contacting through the online platform. All right, keep those thinking caps close by.